I'm Volquartz. I started out as a graphic designer and illustrator, and I got into photography in the 70s. The thing that really gave me an initial boost was I was in Ansel's workshop in Yosemite, and got really inspired by everybody who was up there, and decided that I was going to pursue photography. In the first 10, 15 years it was commercial photography, and I was able to do some really big jobs and did okay, and so I was able to learn a lot, learn to, to solve problems, to photograph things in a way that I could look at it and I could usually get the result I wanted, and that was kind of on the job training. However, when I shot that first piece of aluminum, I decided that commercial photography had its drawbacks. You're always trying to solve somebody else's problems, and I decided to try to pursue photography on my own, and that's what I did. At first it was very, very difficult. I mean, nobody bought prints, nobody paid much attention. I had a couple of teaching jobs for a while to kind of keep me going, but it was very difficult. Most of my work is black and white landscape, although I'm really interested in black and white portraiture. I haven't done a lot of it, but I feel that a portrait is in some ways like a landscape. To try to photograph somebody and draw out some part of their personality is a real challenge. In a sense, it's just like a landscape. I'm not interested in a pretty landscape, so to speak. I'm interested in finding out what it is that attracts me to a certain part of the landscape and trying to communicate. No different than a person, really, or anything else. It can be any subject matter. I kind of develop a methodology of doing things, and that is that I don't bring my camera at first. And if I've been photographing a person, I'll just talk, and I might put the person in an environment before I set up the camera, and then I'll make that person walk away, and I'll set up the camera, and I'll kind of set the stage. I'll know what's in the background and what the camera sees, and then I'll just sit down and shoot. I won't look through the camera. I won't bother with it. The ideal thing is to have an assistant pull the slides and change the film holders so you don't lose contact with the person. And it's the same thing in landscape photography. A lot of times I will not bring out my camera, like in that shot that was shot in the sand dune. When I don't really go out looking for things when I photograph. I try to look at things, and if I feel there's something there that is unique or inspires me, or I get a feeling from, I'll try to find out what it is and then bring my camera out and try to photograph it. A couple of years ago in Zion, we had a workshop up there, and I'd seen a possibility of a shot a couple of years earlier, or a year earlier. So I went there and I set up my camera, and there was a cloud, the sky was all grayed up, and I just sat down in a chair, and I sat there and waited for 2 or 3 hours, and sure enough, the clouds parted, and just for a few minutes, it was right. Photography has got to be the most difficult form of photography I know.
Why is that?
Because there's so many unknowns, and you could go out to a location you think is going to be great, and it's not going to work. You may come back 10 times, twice a year or 3, and it won't be there. And then suddenly one time it'll just be right. It's frustrating. Maybe that's a driving force. The fact that there's a certain level of frustration. You just don't know if you're ever going to get anything. Whereas a commercial shot, you know what you're going to do. You know what the product is going to be. You know what it's going to look like. It's totally a technical problem solving. A problem that needs to be solved technically. A landscape, you have to have the technical know-how to be able to execute it, but the most difficult part is the content. In other words, what is it that you see? What is it that you want to show? And then the technical aspect becomes, well, how do you do that? How do you photograph it, and how do you present it in a print such that the viewer may be able to understand part of it, what you see. This photograph was shot in Nevada earlier in 2006, and this was probably the easiest shot I ever done. It was I consider kind of a gift. We were out. It was during a workshop in Tonopah, and we were outside the day before trying to shoot something, and it was a total sandstorm. We couldn't do anything. Total blackout. It was absolutely horrific. However, next morning we went out there at just a little bit before sunrise, and everything was totally pristine. There was not even a track of any bugs or anything on the sand. And I was walking around and trying to look at stuff, and the sand dune was up there and it looked spectacular, but I saw all these other small things in the sand, and this particular rock here was just laying there, and all the background was kind of, the wind was coming through and leaving a trail, kind of a blown out sand. And just as I was looking at it, the sun was coming up right on axis. So, and I didn't have my cameras, I had to waddle back through the sand back to my car and getting my 5x7 so I could shoot. And I just shot a couple of sheets of it, and then the sun moved and the axis moved, and it was just a shot that'll never happen again. I just happened to be there in the right spot at the right time. This photograph, I actually think, is kind of the photograph that really started me on serious photography. This is a photograph of a small piece of aluminum, which is like 2 inches by 2 inches. It's shot an 8x10, but with a lens, a 55 macro lens meant for a Nikon. And I hot glued the lens onto a lens board on a Deardorff, and it's magnified, I don't know, you figure, 10 times or something like that. And that's the depth, although it looks three-dimensional, it's all virtually a flat piece.